Hey Zeb, so we've talked about a video supplement to the rulebook that will help ensure that the game is easy to learn. So that's what this is, and I hope it'll be helpful. The latest version of the game is, I hope, getting closer to realizing this idea of a more cinematic version of the game, more immersive, more tense, more suspenseful. And I think all that's coming through in our playtest, so I hope you'll be happy with it as well. As I mentioned, not everything is completely dialed in yet, I don't think, but I think the ideas are there, and there's the infrastructure, if you will, that we can build on. So what I'd like to do is go through how the game works, and I hope this will all make sense, particularly in light of the rulebook, which says hopefully all the same things that I'm going to say right now. So let's pan down, and here's the game all set up on the table. And I think let's first go through all of the different components of the game. The first thing we have are, of course, your player pawns. These represent you. We have black cubes, which there's a common supply of those. But also each player has an individual supply, and they represent, your life, your vitality, however you want to think about that. There's also this new concept that's come into the game, which is hubris, and we have these green discs that represent that, and this represents your, pride, arrogance, sort of this composite idea of negative qualities that you're going to have to get rid of at the game. And so if that is the negative qualities, then these green cubes are sort of the antidote to that. You have to acquire green cubes so as to pass the final hubris challenge over here. And the green cubes are what you're going to use for that. And you're going to use those green cubes to buy dice. And so we have two different kinds of dice currently. There's the white dice, which are good, and red dice, which represent the enemy activity. And you're going to roll those in a couple of different areas of the game. So those are very prominent. In addition to the black cube, which represents your vitality, you also have now a time track. And this pushes all the way in the direction of the idea that we're collectively making an Indiana Jones movie together. So this is sort of the running time of our individual movies, and it's going to increment as we do stuff. And then, of course, if we get to the end of the track and it says roll credits, our movie has bored everybody, and that player has lost the game. So time is something that is an ongoing area of pressure. The last thing you have in your vital stats, if you will, are equipment cards. Everybody starts with 4 of those, and you get to choose whether you want to be Indy or some other character who is an archetype of one of the characters in the movie, and different powers that you get with that. So you have your starting equipment cards. You also have equipment cards you're going to acquire as the game goes on over here by interacting with theme tiles. So let's go back over here. So theme cards have, in this version, been replaced by theme tiles. And they represent the same things, but they each have icons that show what that particular tile gets if you go to that city and face an encounter there. So there are icons that give you equipment cards and ones that give you lookups on cards on the temple board over here. And they have matching icons over there. Maybe we'll go over there in a second. So let's talk about those temple cards for a second, because most of them in the red and purple rows, these represent the main activity in the temple. And you can see most of them have these icons that I call peril symbols. And these match icons that are on the equipment cards. And so the idea is you want to know what perils you're going to face and then acquire the equipment cards that are going to match those perils, so you're well prepared, and it's less dice that you'll have to roll in the temple. Okay, the last couple of types of cards I'll mention are the encounter cards, which we'll get to in a second. There are plot twist cards, which I'll also get to in a second, but each person has a few of these, and they're basically things you can play on other players. And then finally, in the temple, there are noise cards, which we'll get to in a second. Last thing I'll mention is this guy, the enemy pawn. So here we have, when you're facing a challenge in a city, the enemy is going to come after you. And so this is a nice way of building up some suspense in the challenges. I think it works very well. All right, so let's talk about what you do in the game turn. Let's say, I'm here, and the game turn has 3 steps to it outside the temple. The first is you increment yourself on the time track. You must do that, that's mandatory. The next 2 actions are optional. For now, you have to do them in order. I don't know if that's important long term. The first is you can travel to a different city. You can go to any city on the board. If you stay in the same region, there's no cost. Or if you travel to a city that's adjacent to your current city, but it's in a different region, there's no cost to that. However, if you travel to a different region in the city that's not adjacent, you have to go up 1 on the time track here. The third thing you do is face an encounter. So you look at the city shape that you're currently in and grab a card from that deck. Some of them have a coin or a hubris symbol on the back. That means the particular challenge you're going to face is especially hubristic, if you will, so you have to take a hubris token for that. Okay, but anyway, you flip the card over and read out the text. This is part of the immersion, so it sets a scene that you're going to face, and so you can read that aloud. And then you'll see a couple things about the encounters. In the upper right, there's an icon that is the challenge category. So if you have equipment that matches that challenge category, you get 1 white die for each such equipment. So for example, if I'm the archetype of Marion and I have the dress, that's worth an escape symbol, so I can get 1 white die for that. And then in addition, from your personal supply, you can pay black cubes to get additional white dice to roll against the challenge. Now, I should have mentioned this, but right when you started the encounter, you take a black cube from the common supply and put that in the city. Okay, so we've got some white cubes from equipment cards and white dice from equipment cards and black cubes, and then we take 1 red die for each black cube that's in the city. So in this case, I would take 3 red dice, and I've paid 2 black cubes, and I have 1 matching symbol, so I would take 3 white dice. And then I'm going to roll them all, and then that's where we get to the success track here, because each check that I roll lets me move up on this track. Now, some of these cards have gaps in them, which says, in this case, I have to take a time penalty to pass to the next space on the track, and then another one here. Also, many of these have sometimes they're split paths, and many of them at the end have a cube, either green or black. So this is one of the main ways of getting green cubes, is reaching the end of an encounter track. Of course, that's not super easy, because every time I roll a red or a black X on a red die, the enemy pawn moves 1 space closer to my city. And so with each X, they get closer. Then when they are in the city, in each subsequent roll, so not in the same roll that they arrived there, but in each subsequent roll, an X means I have to lose a cube or discard an equipment card or go up 1 in time. So enemy results are bad. What's even worse is if I roll a hand symbol, then the enemy has kidnapped this theme tile, and it goes to Berlin. I can still go there, face an encounter in Berlin in the usual way, as if it was any other city, but for now, I wouldn't get to interact with that tile, so that's kind of a bummer. At whatever point I choose to stop, the number on the track tells me the number of rewards that I've received. So if it's 1, I get 1 reward. If the theme tile isn't there, my reward is just a black cube, which is okay, but not great. But if it wasn't kidnapped, then my reward can either be equipment cards, if the tile has that equipment icon, and I would just take equipment cards from the row that matches my city shape. So here I'm in the triangle row, so I would pick from this row, either of the face-up ones or the special equipment card, but I have to take hubris for doing that, because there's a hubris icon on there. Okay, but in this case, this city has a red triangle, and what that means is that over on the temple board here, we can see that there are a few different bins that have red triangles on them. That could mean I can look at either of these cards, or if I had received 2 rewards, I could look at both of them. I'm going to look at them, quickly note the peril symbol on the card. Some of the cards also have a thing called an effect symbol. I might write that down as well. And that's kind of the information I'm going to take from this card. I'm going to write that down on my notepad. Okay, so that is the action outside the temple. That's what we do on our turns. There's another thing that's worth mentioning, which is from previous versions of the game. We have tiles that don't start in the cities. They are the relics. Here we have the Grail Tablet and the Knight's Shield. And to get those, there's a little bit of a path you have to go through. First, you have to visit a theme card or a theme tile that lets you look at one of these location cards, and it tells you, the Grail Tablet is in Madrid, or the Knight's Shield is in Venice, in this case. So you would go to that city on your turn, and then just as a matter of, course, you would say, it turns out the Knight's Shield is here. You would reveal that, and then anybody, including you, can access the Knight's Shield as a reward if you pass an encounter. Now, on some future turn, you can go to any city that doesn't have a theme tile in it, deliver the Knight's Shield there. I mean, assuming you're starting in Venice, but, if you go from Venice to an open city, you deliver the Knight's Shield there, and then you get 2 green cubes for that. So this is one of the ways to get green cubes, is to deliver relics to empty cities. Another way is if you rescue a card or a tile from Berlin. So same kind of thing. If I start my turn in Berlin and I go to an empty city, I can bring the theme tile along with me and get 2 cubes for that. So these are the main ways of getting cubes, is delivering relics or rescuing tiles, making it to the end of a encounter. And then here's the other way. The way we enter the temple phase is one of 2 things. There's a marker that's not on this board right now, but there's a marker that said the enemy has discovered the temple. So either all of our time markers on the time track have passed that, in which case it's mandatory we all enter the temple, or instead of taking a turn, you can just pass. You can say, I'm ready to enter the temple, and take my chances. Let's say this is where the enemy marker is. Let's say green is a player here. So, okay. So when that happens, when either of those two things have happened, we've all passed, or we're all to the right of the enemy marker, we enter the temple phase. And so before we do that, first, anybody who is to the left of the enemy marker gets a green cube for that. And then we reveal the location of the start city. In this case, it is Alexandretta. So if anyone who happens to be in Alexandretta gets a green cube, anyone who is not in Alexandretta has to go up 1 on the time track here. So there's definitely a benefit to knowing where the start city is, even though in this case it's a little bit hard to find. Okay, so that is how we transition into the temple phase, and then we can select a turn order. It's not especially important what order we go in the temple, but for each card in the temple now, we do a couple of steps. So the first is we flip the card over, and then we go around and have to roll red dice against that card. You have to roll 4 red dice, but you get a discount in dice for each peril icon you have on equipment cards of yours that match the peril here. So, for example, this peril is fear, and so if I have 1 fear icon, I would roll 3 red dice instead of 4. So I roll my dice. Only X's really matter here. Each X that I roll is a noise token that I have to take. I don't have noise tokens here, so we'll have to use virtual noise tokens. But I take a noise token for each X that I roll. And then at the end of the card, whoever has the most noise tokens discards them all and takes a noise card, which looks something like this. And it tells me something I have to do. I have to either discard a wits card, in which case I go up 1 in time, or else I have to go up 3 in time. And then we do the same thing for the next card and the next, and then same thing going down the purple row. And of course, having cards that match the perils is beneficial because it's fewer dice I'm going to have to roll. Taking on noise and then having to face these is harmful, because I'm going to discard an equipment card. That might also be a card that has peril symbols on it. So having advanced knowledge also helps me to know which cards I don't want to discard if I can help it. But of course, the penalties are always bad. It's always time or black cubes or hubris, none of which I particularly am very happy about. Okay, so we've made it through the temple. We got to the end, and now we have to face the Grail Room, and that's over here. One of the pieces of information we've gotten are the 3 characteristics of the Grail, of which there are 5 that are possible. It's gold, it's a chalice, it has an inscription, it has gems, or it's on the right side of the Grail Room. So those 3 of those 5 characteristics are going to be true of the True Grail. We're each going to pick what we think is the True Grail, and then we're going to reveal the cards. And in this case, the True Grail was this one, number 10, because it's chalice-shaped, has an inscription, and is on the right side of the room. So anybody who wrote down 10 is going to have chosen wisely and is going to get 3 cubes. Everyone else gets 3 hubris. That's a real big bummer. Okay, so then we make it to the final hubris challenge, which is over here, and it's now sort of a track that has cards on it. But the cards themselves have spaces on the track. What we do now is we're going to roll white dice, but the number that we roll is equal to the number of green cubes we've acquired divided by 2. So if I have 2 green cubes, I'm going to roll 1 die. If I have 4, 2, and so on. So each time what happens is I roll the white dice and discard a hubris token for each check that I roll. Everybody does this, and then we move to the next space, and then do it again, and so on. Whenever you have gotten rid of all of your hubris tokens, you're done with this challenge. It doesn't mean you've won the game necessarily, but you're done with the challenge. And then when we pass off of a card, the last space on a card, we reveal that card, and then something bad happens to everybody in this case, or everybody who has not yet eliminated all their hubris. So a person would have to discard a green card or 2 black cubes. And of course, everything starts getting scarce at this point. You're running low on black cubes, you're running low on time. Here I have to take 2 more hubris or lose 2 black cubes. And then this one I would have to lose 2 black cubes if I still have 3 hubris. And so on. So we reach the end of the track. The board I sent you has a couple additional spaces to it. But anyway, when we reach the space that says game end, that's it. Anyone who still has hubris has failed to purge themselves of their prideful arrogance, and they are eliminated. Their face has melted off. Their head has exploded, however you want to think about it, but very much in keeping with the end of the movies. For anyone who did successfully get rid of all their hubris, whoever is furthest back on the time track is the winner. That person has completed their movie in the shortest length of time. The audience is pleased by this, and that person has retrieved the artifact, gotten rid of their hubris, and they are the winner. So that's how the game works. I realized just now that I forgot one thing, so sorry this is a little out of order, but going way back to encounters, I forgot to mention these plot twist cards, which when you roll a turnabout symbol, like there's 2 arrows in a loop, another player can play a plot twist on you, and this just does something bad to you. Like this one moves the enemy pawn straight to your city. This one, tells you don't count any of the white dice results that you've rolled, that sort of thing. So these are just a way to add a little bit of action for you, even when it's not your turn. You're paying attention to what the other person rolls, and it adds a little bit of cinematic flair to it. So I think overall, the game through the various systems, hopefully the idea is coming through of the cinematic aspects of the game. I think the tension outside the temple works very well with the enemy chasing after you, and then inside the temple, right now it just feels like a very quick conclusion to the game. I think there's room for a little bit of additional detail to the temple, which we can talk about if you like the direction this is going in. But I think it is moving in the right direction. I hope everything makes sense, and I hope you'll have fun playing the game. So good luck and enjoy.